Early Dynasty Warrior games like 2005's Dynasty Warriors 5 have always had a simple enough pitch. Behold, a hack-and-slash power fantasy where you dominate 3rd century Chinese battles, cleaving 100 soldiers with each swing. There are loads of officers to play as, and some of them have massive swords, and some of them have glaives, and some of them are sorcerers, and they're so cool, and you can ride around on your horse and capture bases, and throughout all of this there's electric guitars going. "20 years on, Dynasty Warriors Origins is a tougher pitch. While that horde-cleaving, guitar-shredding DNA still shines, Origins feels like a quarter-life crisis. For a good while, Dynasty Warriors coasted on its charm with a string of samey but endearing games. Now it's 27, and after alienating its admirers with years of sleepwalking and a thundering dud in Dynasty Warriors 9, its confidence is understandably shaken.
The enemy officer has been defeated.
Origins, then, is as much a video game as it is a cry of, "Baby, I've changed!" But there's an essential distinction between change and growth. We don't want the Dynasty Warriors series to become something else. We just want it to be better.
It's over! You can handle this.
In combat, Origins is better. Dynasty Warriors was always more satisfying than precise or layered, a massacre of brain-dead peons broken up by fiddly bouts with slightly formidable officers. In Origins, though, even common foot soldiers fight viciously, coordinating attacks in formations. You can still slaughter them in droves like the old days, but they're no longer entirely toothless. Duels against officers, meanwhile, feel much closer to recent action RPGs than any other Dynasty Warriors game. Sekiro-style guard parries and countering unblockable attacks with special moves a la Nioh 2 make for deliberate and reactive showdowns without slowing the action down. Origins definitely borrows a few strong mechanics from recent games and deepens its own formula, striking a unique balance between methodical combat and power fantasy rampaging. Juggling a battalion of blokes with dash-cancelled flurries is still on the menu though, and we love it. Battle itself is an all-time spectacular high for Dynasty Warriors. Lush foliage, sunbeams peeking through rows of trees, and dusty air in the battlefield bring a much-needed glow-up to a series that's been visually stuck in the body of an early-gen PS3 game for decades. But more than just looks, Origins does a great job of making battles mechanically dynamic and involving. Rather than just being a super soldier on the field, you can now issue commands to nearby groups of allied soldiers, from arrow volleys to infantry charges to battering rams. Enemies issue commands too, making target prioritization a bigger priority than it's ever been, because you will need to deal with those bloody archers.
This territory is ours.
What we enjoyed most, though, is that the battles have beats and sequences now, escalating from skirmishes for strongholds to climactic siege scenarios. There's nothing quite like the hype of descending onto a castle with your fellow generals as the full might of both sides finally converges in an all-out brawl. The crescendo hits every single time, in no small part thanks to the presence of even more dudes on screen.
Look at the size of their army! We're no match for them! Hold them to stray so far from the pack! I'll soon shatter your confidence!
When Origins refines Dynasty Warriors, then, it shines. But when it chooses change over growth, it often forgets what it's good at. That mislaid focus comes at a cost. Series mainstays like Muso mode, free mode, and co-op have all gotten the chop. Instead, Origins goes all in on a single story mode with missions spread across an overworld. For those getting flashbacks to Dynasty Warriors 9's dreadful open world, we have good news and bad news. The good news is it's a dioramic overworld, a bit like in Super Mario Wonder, so it doesn't take forever to get around. The bad news is it's still a tedious and joyless space with nothing but crafting materials, lackluster towns, and filler fights between missions. Above all, one change defines Origins, ditching the traditionally massive roster of playable officers for an original player character. The only opportunity to play as other characters now is by assigning one as your bodyguard and then briefly switching to them. It's a ballsy gambit, but it doesn't pay off. The playable character is a nondescript and emotionless vessel for a hackneyed amnesia story. What's truly baffling about him is that he's so aggressively default that you'd assume he's meant to be a blank slate, a canvas for the player to mould and project themselves onto. Yet there's no way to personalise him at all, other than naming him. But even then, Origins goes on to name him Zulan anyway, so Zulan it is.
Still, Zulan. It has a nice ring to it, and fits you well.
Zulan bumbles through two plots, the War of Three Kingdoms vying for control of China and the mystery of his origins. Early on it's revealed he hails from the Guardians of Peace, a tribe of assassins serving the vague goal of order. Never mind that Zulan fights for aristocrats who yell "show no mercy" while he slaughters surrendering conscripts, however.
Where are they?
The nonsense and hypocrisy don't compare to the painful exposition, though. Zulan learns about himself through cryptic interventions, where figures from his past pop up, lament his amnesia without helping, and info dump when the plot calls for it. At one point, someone presents a glowing medallion to Zulan and literally says,
"That light represents the hopes of the people."
This is a story allergic to subtext.
And with that determination, they can change the world.
Building the game around Zulan nonetheless presents some fresh game design opportunities. Rather than levelling up dozens of officers individually for shallow stat boosts like the old days, Zulan gets all the focus here with several progression systems like skill trees. Most of the unlocks consist of, well, shallow stat boosts, +5 bonuses to attack, defense, health, and so on, with the occasional lackluster special move here and there. However, Zulan is also a martial virtuoso, capable of wielding every officer's weapon, and every kill levels up his proficiency for weapon-specific unlocks. Weapon mastery is the real meat of Zulan's progression. New combo routes, special abilities, movement options, all the changes that make these toys more playful and expressive emerge here. Unlocking a new stance to experiment with on your weapon of choice is a truly joyful moment that balloons your lethality to even more obscene heights. The focus on Zulan, however, blights the Three Kingdoms narrative. Alongside Zulan comes a reputation system where you can level up your bond with essentially every officer in the game, up to a maximum level of 5. But here's the deal. Zulan is a human yawn with no desires, opinions, or initiative, yet nearly every character in the game instantly falls for him.
Talking with you always brings me such irreplaceable joy. Hence, why I come all this way.
It's maddening how often characters pull Zulan aside to profess their feelings, that they sense his purity of heart, that there's something about him, only to awkwardly exit the scene 2 beats later with a glacial 180.
I'm sure we'll cross paths again. I look forward to it.
It's a shame because Zulan eventually faces a compelling dilemma, the choice of which kingdom to serve once the real war kicks off. On paper, it's a creative integration of the Muso mode from the old games, where you play through the war as your kingdom of choice. But by that point, the story's dreadful execution has already starved this choice of its power. Origins just can't help itself. It's obsessed with doting over Zulan, insisting on his boring and patronising origin story and putting him on a pedestal in every scene. It's a constant pace killer, a tragic distraction from what otherwise could have been the most coherent and comprehensive Dynasty Warriors narrative to date. Would it still be cheesy and extra and waxing pseudo-philosophical? Damn straight. But at least it wouldn't be getting in its own way.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to prattle on. Please, excuse me.
The more we look at Zulan, the more we see the nucleus of Origin's problems. Without Zulan, there's no boring overworld full of pointless towns and dull loot. There's quality battle after quality battle. Without Zulan, there's no woeful, original plot diluting the pace. There's the War of the Three Kingdoms. Without Zulan, there's no obligation to fawn over the player at all times. There's a roster of sick officers to unlock and play as. Origins goes all in on building itself around Zulan, but whatever qualities his creators, or every officer in 3rd century China, see in him, we certainly don't. It's almost poetic how Origins severs its root for a character whose sole characteristic is identity loss.
Is this as far as my path is to take me?
Origins, then, is a curious case. It's a baffling mishmash of welcome growth and unwelcome change, but beneath this messy buffet of undercooked ideas lies the best version of the Dynasty Warriors we know and love. It's a good game with top-notch hack and slashing, sure, but it stumbles off the battlefield due to its soulless original character.
The enemy officer has been defeated.
If you enjoyed this video review, please do give it a like, subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, and then perhaps check out one of our other video reviews that are on screen and clickable right now. Goodbye.
Situation.
The enemy officer has been defeated.